Welcome back to Company Growth Partner. My name is Jason. I am a digital marketing and branding expert in Los Angeles, California. I'm joined by
Matt Borka. I'm a revenue operations expert and a media buyer, signing in from Bangkok, Thailand.
Bangkok, Thailand, Los Angeles, California. We are Company Growth Partner.
Yep.
Today, we are going to be discussing Matt's journey from Hungary. You heard me correctly, Hungary to Bangkok, Thailand, all while building a completely American business. This story is incredible. Make sure you stick around for the entirety of it because I find it to be very inspiring. And I'm glad that you are willing to share some of it this way, Matt, because I feel like this could be super, super interesting to anybody who's interested in building a business here in the States.
I mean, yeah, I'd say that my story is very unique, and we've been talking about making this video for such a long time, but, as we talked about it off camera, you weren't really sure if I would be willing to go into a topic like this.
I mean, one of the things that always gets asked when I tell people about the work that I do with you is people want to understand how you own and run a business that is an American business while living in Bangkok, Thailand. Everybody I talk to is like, wait, you work all day with somebody who lives in Thailand? Isn't it nighttime there? And I'm like, it is.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that's like just one tiny glimpse into what this story sort of represents. The fact that from Hungary all the way to Bangkok, Thailand, you have managed to build a completely American business by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Right? I think it would be useful to start with you discussing a little bit about your upbringing in Hungary and why you feel your upbringing in Hungary maybe sparked your interest specifically in American culture and American business.
If I want to be like really meta, the values of the United States are actually very Protestant. At the time when a lot of the first immigrants arrived to the United States, they were, from a value standpoint, they were escaping from Catholicism, right? So a lot of the first settlers were heavily Protestant, and I'm from a Protestant family, and hard work was always something that my family valued, and like whether it's my my gran or anyone really, everyone is just, like a really hard worker in the family. That's where the similarities end, right? Because what I've also seen in Hungary, and coming from Hungary, I've seen this massive divide. And Hungary is in a really interesting position in Europe, right? It's in Central Europe. Some people say it's in Eastern Europe. It's kind of like in between. It's like on the verge of Eastern Europe, really. What happens in Hungary is the carrot has always been dangled in front of us saying, hey, look at this. We're making money, but you don't, because we're using you to make money. My parents, both of them, have been making around $500 per month. Okay. I believe that their salary increased a little bit so that now they're making like 800. And, my dad, like he used to do, like he's been doing like adult education stuff. He did it for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then, he was going home like super late every day, like, like sometimes at 10 o'clock getting paid $500, just to tell you like how difficult it can get. So his car broke down. He didn't have enough money to buy a new car. He's 60. And then I asked him, hey, do you want me to help you out? Because, like that would mean you would have to give up your life savings to buy a fucking car. And I think for me, that's like, why would you humiliate, an adult person who has been hard? And this is the system, right? And I always felt that the system is doing this to people, right? Putting people down, making people, feel worthless because they're barely getting paid. Yeah, I saw that. And then from the age of 4, I started to learn English. And then I realized I was like better at it than the average kid. And then, the whole accent thing came along. Like, I was doing that when I was a kid. Like, okay, if I'm speaking English, it has to sound different. But at the time, I wasn't aware, right?
Interesting. As young as what, 4 or 5 years old, you were trying to figure out how to like get rid of your accent?
No, not. I wasn't trying to get rid of it, but I understood that when you speak English, you have to sound different.
Interesting.
Right. But I wasn't aware that accents exist. However, I'd been learning the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, from the age of 7, because I was going to a school where like that was the first school in Hungary after communism that had a bilingual curriculum, at least in my city, right?
Wow.
Where I'm from Northeast. I'm from the Northeast. So like, I was aware of a lot of the things about like, okay, you have to pronounce it this way and that way. And obviously, that was a huge help. I was actually taught British English in elementary school, right? But then when I was in high school, obviously, identity crisis. Who am I? What do I want to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And all that. And then, the internet came along, and then all of a sudden you were able to kind of like pick and choose what you wanted to watch instead of, watching whatever on TV. Then I found TV shows that I liked. And then, I just like, I like these guys' accent better because they sound confident. Like that's how it started. Because, these guys sound more confident than British people. I don't know why, but I just like that more.
That's fascinating right there. I love that. You found that listening to Americans on the internet or like watching your favorite TV shows, you found Americans' accent to sound more confident than that of British people.
And cool.
Yeah,
it just sounded cool. Like it's like something I was able to identify with.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. And then I started to have this realization that, there was something on the other side of the pond that we don't have, or I don't understand what it is. Right. I wasn't sure what it was at the time. So I started to watch a lot of YouTube videos. And that's when like Fine Bros or Kids React and all these shows started to come along. Red and Link with Good Mythical Morning, right? Like I started to discover all these YouTubers like Jenna Marbles and a lot of the oldies. What happened was I locked myself. So this is where it started, right? Okay, I want to learn English because I want to get the fuck out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fed up with this bullshit. I don't want to work here. I don't want to make $500 for the rest of my fucking life.
Really, you're motivated by, your father is one example of what you're saying could be emblematic for the experience for a lot of people in Hungary, where he had a professional career for 20 years consistently, and never was he able to increase his income to the place where he could even replace his car as a grown person. And you're now making the point that you started to understand, I don't want to do business in this place.
Oh, no. Well, and here's the other thing, right? Business in Hungary is like, it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? It got better over the years, but all I saw was you don't go into business because someone's going to take it from you, or you're going to go out of business because the tax system is designed to take money. In Hungary, you pay 40% tax no matter what, just like in California. But then we don't have Hollywood in Hungary, okay, or anything like that. There's no software companies in Hungary, and they're still taking 40%.
Wow.
Right? And that's only income tax. We haven't talked about the VAT, which is 27% on everything. So obviously, all the prices are naturally inflated. So I couldn't see myself succeeding there, and I had to find a way to escape. Right? I felt like I was in a prison. So like seriously.
And when you started to say like TV shows, like are there any that come to mind? Just curious.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Kyle XY. That was a really interesting one.
Oh yeah, I remember that show.
Kyle XY on ABC. I started watching in Hungarian first. That was the pivot point. They stopped airing the TV show with Hungarian dubs. So I had to find a way to continue watching the TV show, because I was that interested in the story. So I ended up watching the American, the version of it, and I was like, I'm not going to use that was the next thing. I'm not going to use subtitles because I'm not a bitch, right? Because a lot of Hungarians, I'm going to do it with subtitles, but I'm like, you're not going to learn anything from it if you're not challenging yourself, right? So I was like, no subtitles, and I was not understanding sometimes a freaking word. So, and I was looking up every single word because my listening skills were already pretty good.
Wow.
So I learned I can still remember the words I learned from that show. Apparently, obviously, like I had zero vocabulary at the time. So I was learning all these words, seemingly basic words, but I was learning all of that from YouTube
This
and
is so cool.
TV shows.
Obviously, that's
like every single word.
Fascinating.
To this day, I haven't stopped. Like I told myself, if you don't know a word, you're going to look it up. So I convinced my mom to buy this Oxford Advanced Learner Dictionary that I still have to this day.
Oh, that's cool.
I had a secondhand iPhone because I told her like I need that. So she bought a secondhand iPhone for me, and that was like my whatever you want to call it.
Your gateway into American culture.
Well, yeah, because it allowed me to learn words. And by the way, that's why I have the vocabulary I have, because I was able to type the word in if I didn't know it, because phonetically, I mean, I knew how to like spell it because I had the skill, because I had the listening skills. And then I was just looking up every fucking word, every single one.
Oh. Right.
And then, I got better and better and better. My listening skills started to get better and better and better. My accent started to get better and better and better. And then, sometimes I locked myself in my room for days, especially on, when school was off. And then I was watching like 8 TV shows at the same time. And I was not willing to speak in Hungarian. And then I started talking to my mom in English because I was just so in it. That's interesting.
Your mom speaks English?
That never happened. Oh, no. I just because I was watching the TV shows for so long, I didn't have like the switch mechanism yet. And then I started speaking to her in English.
Oh, you're saying you were speaking to your mom in English without realizing that's what you were doing?
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And then I went to university. I also, I have a BA in English and American Studies. I have a specialization in Americanology. So I studied American politics, history. I wrote my thesis about the sociolinguistic differences between the two coasts.
Fascinating.
So yeah, like I was completely in it.
And I mean, you've now taken that journey, not just from an educational place, but to a very practical place, to the point where you're running a business that is an American business with an American employee. Like you're literally taking meetings with only American business owners at this point. You are completely operating within business hours that are only in the United States, and yet you live in Bangkok, Thailand. It's all very interesting. You've totally pushed yourself into the American system almost entirely. It's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was the only way, because I lived in Scotland for 5 years and I was not getting the opportunities I was getting from the United States. I did project work for Google for a year, American company. And then I was hired by an agency called Tier 11, yet again, American company. Mm-hmm. I was applying for marketing jobs in the UK. I did get an internship that turned into something else. But apart from that, and besides a couple of freelance clients, no one was willing to give me a job. So I had the desire, but then even the British system said, no. So I was like, okay, so I'm gone, because, Brexit happened, and then my wife is Thai. She's originally from here. So I saw the economic arbitrage of moving to Thailand, initially as someone who was working for the agency as an independent contractor. But then after a while, I decided to move on and find private clients. And then eventually we met, right? Mm-hmm. But, my ideology is, and this is what, I had to create a framework for myself. I literally had to trick myself thinking as a coping mechanism that, I'm actually from there. It's been a coping mechanism forever, because I was protecting myself and my brain from whatever was going on back home. And that's how, I managed to kind of deal with everything, right? A lot of people have alcohol issues back home. My age, our age, alcoholics at the age of 30, and a lot of people, More people than you think.
And a lot of those people you're finding they're in pretty tough economic situations.
There's no jobs. I mean, yes, people would say there's jobs. Yeah, sure, there's jobs, but there's no career opportunities. There's dead-end jobs that you cannot get out of. There's no upward mobility. You know, every single time I talk to someone, everyone keeps telling me, it's okay.
Yeah.
The only people who have careers are the ones who left Hungary. Like, I have a friend who lives in Paris, and he's working for some environmental institution. Then I also have a friend who lives in Austria, and he just got a really significant CFO position at a major Austrian firm.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, the moment these people leave the country, all of a sudden opportunities come along. But I chose the American path because for whatever reason, and that's how it happened to me.
Do you feel that do you feel that your decision to leave Hungary and to pursue business specifically in America has shaped your leadership style? Because you do run the business and you do have a lot of ideology, very specific ways of thinking about business. Do you feel that any of that's been shaped by your journey?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm very, very particular about paying people because of how, a lot of my family members have been treated for, quite frankly, decades, if not longer, being treated as slaves. I'm not afraid to say it. That's how the European Union is treating Hungarians and other Eastern Europeans. That's one thing. But then on the other hand, I do believe that my leadership style has been significantly influenced by people like Gary Vee, Alex Hormozy, Leila Hormozy. I mean, these are the people, like literally no one has a business in my family. Several generations back, no one does. Because everyone was too afraid to start it. Mm-hmm. Because everyone was too afraid of the risks and going out of business because no one had the means. Like, how? Like, there was no way. So I had to learn everything on the fucking internet.
I mean, that's something we talk about a lot and something you touched on, which is that you had the internet to give you so much access to information, but also you were able to sort of entrench yourself in American culture, really, to the point where you were able to learn English almost in a secondhand way. It's very, very cool.
The moment I started to read in English, especially during college, I started to realize I'm learning faster. And then the more books I read in English, the more I realized that there's something about the way the language has developed that allows you to consume information faster.
Interesting.
Once I realized that, the better my English has gotten and the more strategies I developed so first I was reading on my phone because I could not afford an iPad. I was literally reading on my phone for the longest time, and people thought I was stupid. I didn't want to buy books because I knew that if I had the books on my phone, I was able to look the words up very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can just switch the apps. And then I was doing the audiobook to improve my accent as well, plus to kind of learn the intonation more and more and more. That's how I learned everything. I'm just like, I found a way to overclock my learning mechanisms in order to, and with the accent as well, right? Like, I'm very particular about the way I sound. Very, very particular about it.
I think that's a super interesting pivot into possibly discussing your journey from Hungary to now running an American business. It has been long. It's been arduous. You've had to do a lot of work to make that happen. And a lot of that has been about learning English, but you've also talked a lot about the importance to you of getting your accent to a place where you sounded American. So why was that so important to you?
Initially, it was a personal thing. It was a very personal thing because I wanted people to know that those are my values, if that makes sense, because I always felt that accent is kind of like a business card. So
interesting. You wanted your accent to ensure that people would know that you carried American business values.
Initially, not business values, but American values. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
But yeah, I mean, at first it was a personal thing. And then it became like this whole, like, if people who knew me, like, knew that was like very, very important to me, even in university, that, my goal was that if I introduce myself to anyone, I want people to think that I'm from the United States. That has been my mantra since I was 17.
Since leaving Hungary and since trying to, work in any industry, not just as an entrepreneur, but like, have you experienced any sort of pushback as to you being an international person?
So here's where it gets tricky, right? And, we talk about this all the time, and I always ask for feedback. But the moment people find out that I'm Hungarian, or I live in Bangkok, sometimes the conversation gets slightly tricky. And I don't like that, because sometimes if I don't tell people, they would never know, ever. But I feel it's important for them to know, because it's part of my identity. That I have access to both worlds, because I'm fully bilingual now. And I don't want to lie to people, but this is my true identity, and the people who know me the most, they know that this is me. As I was working with more and more people, there were questions, weird remarks, like indirect messages that, like kind of questioning, my validity as a person. That happened, unfortunately, and I don't think it's right, but it happened.
Mm-hmm. You've shared those messages with me, and it's often micro. I mean, it's often a subtle thing, right? But it's often people simply asking questions like, I don't know if I can trust X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z or something. There will be these sort of assumptions made that because you're...
Yeah, so here's where it gets interesting. If I don't say anything, there's no issues. There's only issues if they know. I have sometimes trust issues, like, should I tell you or should I not? Are you going to judge me for it? Or you're going to be okay with it? And it's always, something I think about before I share it with a person, because so far there hasn't been a situation where my ethnicity hasn't affected the business, unfortunately. Sometimes, I'm not going to mention names, but people like fucking with the money situation when they know I'm overseas. They like doing that. Like, I have done everything for the past 15 fucking years to fit in. I'm not giving you a discount just because I didn't pop out of the, on American soil.
I mean, that's like really what it is, right? You'll find that some of these people, some business owners, will use the fact that you are international and that you are working remotely from another country as an excuse to try to gouge you from, price gouge you. They'll try to like make sure that you don't charge them.
And I like being naive and innocent sometimes. I do have a Hungarian side as well. I just don't like showing it.
Yep.
And, I can turn it on if I want to. And in situations, I have turned it on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you want me to be like that, you'll get it and I'll give it to you.
You're talking about the fact that you've made an active decision, one, to leave Hungary, right? And to sort of immerse yourself in American culture and to teach yourself as much about being an American and operating in America as you can. And you've done that so that you can operate business with American people with as little friction as possible. And at the same time, you're finding there's some power, especially when some of these people are trying to push back on you, in taking ownership over your journey and saying, no, I've worked for 15 years at this.
That happened before when, people come in and, it doesn't matter because you're not here. So you don't have to be mentioned, right? Like that happened before.
Oh, sure.
Right?
People will take credit for your work. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it gets weird because here's when I'm extremely grateful for this, by the way, because I really literally learned a lot of things, life skills from Americans, because I was not able to do that back home.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, I feel grateful. And then, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because sometimes, and this is where I'm going to fuck with all the conservatives, I feel, and I want to get this on record, more patriotic about things in the United States because I've been given so much. Like literally, when I moved to Scotland, I was sleeping on the floor, and then I had like literally like like an American flag like thingy, what was it called, like bed sheet that I got from my mom. It's like a like she knew about my perversion.
Your perversion, your obsession with American culture. So she got you American flag bed sheets.
Yeah.
I mean, you were literally sleeping on the floor on like a mattress in Scotland with little to no money, just trying to make your way from Hungary into something better.
Make the American dream like the best way possible with the resources I had possible at the time. And I can say that at the age of 31, yeah, I think I still have a long way to go. But one way or another, I have a fair shot at competing in the game of business in the United States, just like someone who was actually born there. And I can say that with like no ego attached. And then, I think it's really important to make a video like this because there are a lot of people, not only in the United States, in Western countries, Eastern Europe, Asia, they want to do what I'm doing, but they don't know how. They don't have the means how, and sometimes they buy into these programs that offer hopes and dreams and money and status, and then sometimes that doesn't happen.
If somebody, say there was a young version of you in literally, maybe in Hungary now, who would love to ask you like, hey, I'd like to compete in an American business. Like I'd love to actually start an American business. I'm in Hungary. I don't feel like I have much. Where do I even start? What would you say to that person?
Consume as much content as humanly possible. So I had to go through this very difficult process of realizing the flaws of my culture and how that's holding me back, and then kind of separate it, understand what I can take from it, and bring it over to the American side and leave the bad things behind. That was a very difficult process. And probably it took me several years to kind of figure out like how to navigate that. What you need to do is you have to, whatever you're interested in, it doesn't have to be business, right? I chose business because I'm very passionate about business. But whatever you're into, find the people who talk about it online. Take a deep dive in it, and then like that's going to help you to get started. And then you also have to stick. Like I've been doing this for more than 15 years. Like that's something people need to understand. Mm-hmm. I didn't change my mind. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Anyone who's telling you to study multiple languages, tell them to fuck off, because you're going to waste your time. I have several friends who studied other languages. And I know that this is maybe a controversial topic, but if the language is not tied to your goals, don't study it for the sake of studying it, because you're going to waste time. You could have gone better at your second language instead of wasting time on a third one.
That's really solid advice, I think. For anybody who's international, it's like tie your language learning and that time to your goals, which is exactly what you've done for the better part of 15 years. All of your language learning and exercises have been about American culture.
So by the way, like this is super important. With my language skills, I could have learned other languages, but I've given that up so that I can speak like this.
It's inspiring, truly. I think that's actually like exactly the kind of information that a lot of people need to hear, really, just frankly, is that if you're looking to make those kinds of goals happen for yourself in business or otherwise, it really is about hard work, dedication, all of that. But you really immersed yourself in the content of the people who are making the things out there that you knew you wanted to make someday.
I know that there are maybe a lot of Americans who are like, feel like, okay, things are not really going well here, but you have to understand that there's probably a lot of young people looking up to you guys.
Like all over the world. Yeah.
It's real. I learned a lot from Americans, and I learned it from the people. So that's super important to understand. I don't care which side you're on. I don't care what your ideology is. Whatever you guys have is special. And you can take it to other countries, but then don't say that because I know that there are some content creators out there saying that America is like the worst place on earth. And then, like you should leave. Sure, you can leave, but you can leave because you started there in the first place.
Yeah.
And a lot of people haven't.
Yeah.
I certainly cannot do what you can do because I don't have the capital yet. And that's why I need to make moves like this. Working from Thailand, it's an economic arbitrage. By staying here, I can heavily, very aggressively invest in things that I might not be able to afford if I had to pay thousands of dollars in rent.
Oh, yeah. It's also just useful advice for anybody who's trying to do what you're trying to do, to say, if you want to, because of the internet and because of the way that things have developed now, if you want to do business in America, you don't actually need to physically be in America.
You can legally do it, by the way.
Of course.
This is super important to understand. For anyone feeling like, oh yeah, like how can I get it started? You can get it started. That's the big benefit of the United States. You can have an American business and you don't have to physically reside in the United States. That applies to, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most countries, but I'm sure that there might be some exemptions.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting, and we'll probably end up talking more at length later about your story. Well, there's just a lot to it, that like I feel like we've only touched on like the tip of the iceberg in terms of your experiences and how you've gotten to where you are now. But I feel like even just this introduction to you is chock full of information for people who are interested in working remotely to start an American business, to say it's possible. This person didn't just start an American business without being in America. This person is running an American business without being in America. And this person was born and raised in Hungary. Like it's a very inspiring and I think useful story for anybody who wants to work internationally.
And here's the other thing, because there are a lot of people doing this. I'm front facing. Right? I'm showing my face and I'm on calls. I don't run an e-commerce business. I need to show my face and I need to communicate with clients very intimately in order to earn their trust. And I think if there's anything unique about my story is that I'm doing, I'd say, the hardest thing, which is, I'm willing to go in and take the bias, take the prejudice, because I want to do this. I don't care how many times, people are going to say weird things or make like weird remarks. I don't care, right? Because I want to do this. And I want to show people that it's possible. If it's possible for me, it's possible for other people too.
Absolutely it is. That's such a great way to, I feel, end this conversation. And honestly, if you're interested in any of what we do at Company Growth Partner, click the link in our bio. We'd love to chat with you.
Yeah.